Today we're going to start the first part in the series, How to Find Clients as a Freelancer. Hello, my name is Peter Fisher. I'm a freelance web and mobile applications developer. Today's video is a bit of a reality check because lots of people discuss freelance and they talk about how brilliant it is and how wonderful getting into freelance is, how untied you become, how independent you are, and all of this kind of stuff. And yes, that is true, but not a lot of people actually talk about what it is to become a freelancer. And that's the whole point here. It's becoming a freelancer. Personally, I think becoming a freelancer is far more difficult than being a freelancer. Once you've become a freelancer, things start being a rhythm. You start getting into a routine. You start doing stuff that you did before and you know that has worked because you've tried it out, and stuff hasn't worked, so you don't do that anymore. Stuff has worked, so you continue doing that kind of stuff. Becoming a freelancer means that you have to discover those kind of things, and there is a lot of stuff involved in being a freelancer that not a lot of people talk about. So for instance, I was taken aback by how much time I spend as a freelancer doing freelancey type stuff that isn't really directly paying me. Okay, so for example, marketing, advertising, doing your taxes, networking, chasing invoices, all of that kind of stuff. And there's many more stuff that you have to do as a freelancer that isn't directly going to make you money. Yes, it will probably make you money indirectly, but the reason why you're chasing invoices is because you're not being paid. The reason why you're advertising is because you need the work. And it's certainly not sunshine and roses all of the time, because there are periods of time where you are waiting for quotes to be confirmed, you're waiting for networking, you're waiting for the different opportunities and so forth. And you're doing a lot of thinking. You're also doing a lot of doubting, because if things don't go well, then you start doubting yourself. You start doubting not only your ability as a coder, but also the ability as a businessman. So becoming a freelancer is certainly not easy at all. Now in this series, we're going to be focusing on how we get clients. And getting clients is more difficult when you're becoming a freelancer than it is when you are an established freelancer. Because obviously, when you're becoming a freelancer, you don't actually have any clients to begin with, and you have to find those clients. Now, the first reality check that I want to mention is that just because you have your portfolio, just because you may have done a couple of projects on the side, just because you've got your advertising done, your marketing done, doesn't mean that suddenly your phone is going to be ringing off the hook. It doesn't mean that clients are going to be knocking at your door and queuing up for you to do work for them. Now, it's very common, of course, that when you're becoming a freelancer, when you're starting out, you'll probably be doing a lot of quotes, and you'll be waiting and waiting for those quotes to be confirmed. You'll be talking, you'll be doing a lot of networking and communication with potential clients. But just remember, just because you've done a quote doesn't mean that you're going to get the work. In fact, 9 times out of 10 when I started up, I didn't actually get the work back when I did the quote. And I spent an awful long time writing quotes, doing recommendations, doing reports for potential clients, and not actually getting any return from it directly. And the point I want to make there is just because someone doesn't take you on doesn't mean that they're not going to be talking about you to another person, another potential client. So there may be a period where you're doing a lot of work up front in order to do a lot of quotes, and you might think that this is pointless because you're not actually getting work back. But in actual fact, what might be happening behind the scenes is the client might be thinking, oh, this is a little bit too expensive, or perhaps something has happened in their life that has changed how they want the system to be working, or maybe they have a budgetary thing. So the point there that I want to make is that just because you're not getting any income from a quote right away doesn't mean that you're not going to get income from that quote later on, whether that's indirect or direct from that particular client. Reality check number 2 is that just because you've done a quote for a client doesn't mean that that client won't be looking for other quotes from other developers, right? So they're going to be looking for the best price. They're going to be looking for the most reliable and likable developer to work with. And they're probably going to be looking at a handful of quotes. It could be anything up to 5 or more quotes. So just because you've done a quote doesn't mean that it's going to come back as a positive thing. Reality check number 3 is that you have to spend money in order to make money. So you have to advertise yourself. You might have to do Facebook ads, you might have to do Instagram ads, you might have to do Google ads, and also you need to network, which means that you probably need to travel, which means that you need fuel in your car. You might be signed up to a business breakfast subscription. So that means that you go and actually go to a business breakfast with other business people who talk about what they're doing and gives you an opportunity to talk about what you're doing. So it's a very good networking thing. But all of that costs money, right? So you have the subscription for that, you have the traveling, you have the food, and all of that kind of stuff. And also the time that you're spending doing that is obviously time away from working, from actually doing the work for other people. So you do have to spend money to advertise yourself, to promote yourself, to talk about yourself. Just because you've done a website and you might be high up in maybe the Google search rankings doesn't mean that everyone is suddenly going to flock to you. Reality check number 4 is all about your personality. So if you come across as an arrogant person, if you come across as someone who perhaps thinks that they know it all, or if you come across as someone who is very moody when you are doing these networking things, or when you're just talking to people in general, then they're going to least go to you, even though you might be extremely good at what you do, because people will remember that conversation. They'll remember that impression that you gave them. So you have to be nice, and it means you have to be nice even when you don't want to be nice. And I don't mean you have to be fake, but you just, you're going there to promote your business. And so any kind of thing that you have going on in your life that might be getting you down, you need to leave that at your doorstep. You are now going into a professional conversation where you need to talk professionally to another professional about how you can become a resource for what they're looking for. Which means that you have to have a completely different mindset. You're not just talking to someone down the pub, you're talking to a potential client who is potentially going to be paying your wage for the next few months. And reality check number 5 is all about money. You need to have money to be a safety net. You need to be able to afford things when things go wrong. So for example, something that's happened recently to me is that my laptop has died, and therefore I've needed to get another laptop. I've needed to buy things for this office when I didn't expect that I needed to. I've needed to pay for, obviously, my taxes. I've needed to pay for travel when I didn't expect that I was traveling. All of those kind of things. Then you have business insurance. Then you have all of the other financial commitments that your business requires. So you need to have not only a safety net, but you also need to have a proper good margin of error. Reality check number 6 kind of follows on to number 5, and that is just because you've done work in 1 month doesn't mean that you're going to do work in the second month. It's very easy to get into that mindset of, this is what I earned in the first month, so therefore that is what I expect in the second month. It's not always like that. It fluctuates. It goes up and down. Now, based on point number 5, where you need to have your safety net, I certainly advise that any money coming in, you put in a margin of error, which means that you can tie yourself over the months that are very quiet. Reality check number 7 is all about your mental health. because there's going to be times where you're going to be doubting yourself, doubting your ability to write code, doubting your ability to run a business, because things are going to get quiet and you're going to be umming and ahhing about whether or not this was a good idea, whether becoming a freelancer was actually what you should have done. Obviously, when you're in a full-time position and things go wrong, or perhaps you've had a bad day or week, you still get paid at the end of the month. However, when you don't get paid as a freelancer, it is quite a reflection on how you are, or how you perceive you are, how good you think you are, because there is something that you can measure there. And it's not the right thing to do, obviously, but the more money you have in the bank, the better you think you are doing, right? So when you don't have money in the bank, you think that what you're doing is terrible, you shouldn't even become a programmer, you get the imposter syndrome, you're in a lot of self-doubt and everything like that. So just be aware that it's not all fun and games. Reality check number 8 is when you actually go to a client, when you actually talk to a client, you need to understand exactly what that client's needs are, and you need to read between the lines as well, because sometimes the client doesn't tell you everything right away, because perhaps the client expects you to know certain things. So my advice is to ask stupid questions, because there isn't any stupid questions, there's only stupid answers. So even if you've got a little inkling in the back of your head, something telling you that you need to check this, check it. There's no harm in just asking, and there's no harm in asking again. If the client has said something and then perhaps you've forgotten to write that down, then ask again. It shows the client that you are taking this project seriously. Reality check number 9 is all about playing the long game. Just because a client doesn't give you work straight away doesn't mean that they're not going to give you work, say, in 3 months' time, 2 years' time, 1 year's time, or whatever. It also means that the people that you talk to that are perhaps not even your client might be talking to potential clients for you, as in word of mouth. And finally, reality check number 10 is all about working full-time instead of working freelance for yourself. So you're working for another company. Now that might sound a little bit strange, but actually that's a good place to pick up clients. Because if you think of all the other reality checks that I've mentioned, about how you're having to play the long game, about how you need to be nice to people, about how clients talk to other clients, about what you do, working full-time in a company where you have lots of people that you can engage with and talk to is actually quite a good networking resource, because in that company people will come and they will go, they will move on to other jobs, and the impression that you've given them they will take with them to wherever they're going. So you can kind of see that like a spider's effect, right? So you go to that one company and you're there for a few years, you get on with the colleagues and so forth, and then they perhaps move on somewhere else and they mention your name. If something comes up, I need to have a developer on such and such. That is actually quite a powerful way of getting clients. So one thing I certainly would recommend anyone who is trying to get into freelance is be a full-time developer working for a company first. Don't just expect that suddenly, because you've got your degree, because you've done all your college courses, because you've got a portfolio, doesn't mean that suddenly everything is going to come your way in terms of freelance work. It isn't like that. Now, in this series, we're going to be covering all sorts of things about getting clients when you're becoming a freelancer. If you've got any questions, though, then do put them down in the comments section below, and I'll see if I can answer them within this series. Thanks ever so much for watching. Happy coding, everyone, and I'll see you again soon. Thanks. Bye.